God.
There we go.
My goodness. I'm resident of Hollywood for YouTube, Jules Sains. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. That's my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to talk about all about Harlan Ellison, not just the documentary, but how basically, James Cameron basically ripped off of his stories. So, I first learned about Harlan Ellison through Patrick and Alan here. I watched both films. I watched the documentary. When did you guys first discover Harlan Ellison's work, his writings?
Sometime in the 70s, probably. I was a teenager. That seems to be when people come to science fiction storytelling a lot. So I was probably 15, 16, somewhere in there.
Yeah, Harlan Ellison was always a name that existed in my world somehow. When I was 5, my mother was teaching at a community college a class on science fiction. And the Dangerous Visions books were texts that she had. And so, the name appeared there with that fantastic font and cover. And then as I got older, I became aware of him as this hipster elder god of science fiction writers. And then the book Dance Macabre happened.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever read Dance Macabre?
I've read sections out of it. Yeah, I actually bought it because there's a section in it on Dark Shadows and how it inspired Stephen King when he was, a teenager or in his early 20s. We lost. He's gone. My God, what did I say? But anyway, yeah. I mean, Dance Macabre is kind of a writer's book anyway. It explains his process, and I think he used it to actually teach courses on writing at one point, if I'm not mistaken. Or some people have anyway, with his permission.
I think the documentary does a really good job explaining his life.
His irascibility, his childhood, his admitted wise guy attitude that got him in trouble even as a kid.
Yeah,
his combativeness, all of the stuff that we has become a legend about him, the person. But also the fact of the matter is, the man was a prolific writer. He just produced a ton of stuff, particularly in the first 10 or 15 years of his career. Just like unloaded stuff.
Now, I never read any of his writings, but after watching the two, not just this documentary, but the 2 episodes of The Outer Limits, Demon with the Glass Hand, and The Soldier, I will say that, if you take when you look at Demon with the Glass Hand, here's a story about this robot.
Yeah, he's a cybernetic creation, no doubt.
Yeah, who's trying to save mankind, and Terminator does eventually use that.
Yes, eventually, and starting with the second movie and definitely moving forward from there, you get the Terminator becoming a protector.
Yeah.
And this is what Robert Culp's character is definitely doing. Was it Kent or something like that? Kent, whatever. Yeah, I think that's the name of the character. But he thinks he's human.
Yeah.
The Terminator was never under any such misapprehension. He knew he was a machine.
So. Whereas in the Soldier deals with time travel. It deals with a man from the future coming to Earth's past, and now Terminator used dogs to detect, but in the Soldier they use cats to telepathically speak to the Soldier, which I found unique. You could definitely tell that James Cameron had taken from these two things.
Yeah.
Just
The most obvious example is the first 3 minutes of Soldier. That's where it's like almost a shot for shot.
Yeah.
It's really close. And you couple that with the fact that Cameron in an interview admitted to ripping off Harlan Ellison, and you've got yourself a lawsuit brewing, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Of course, after Cameron at that point didn't have a lot of money anyway, so he settled. He, of course, when he becomes this zillionaire, he starts calling Ellison a pain in the ass and saying he would have crushed him and all this sort of thing. And it's like, forget about it. Nobody crushes Harlan Ellison.
Who, James Cameron said this?
Yes. Later
fool.
on, after he had, like $100 million in his pocket.
That doesn't matter to Harlan.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. What matters to Harlan is ripping out your throat if you tick him off. He did not suffer fools. Or
this guy took a swing at Sinatra.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. He yipped at Sinatra over a pool table. It's like,
that's great. And Italian leather boots. I remember that detail. What a guy. Yeah, I was saying before I got ignominiously cut off about Dance Macabre. Julie, have you ever read that book?
No.
You would writhe with pleasure if you did. It was Stephen King just talking about the cultural history of horror.
Mm-hmm. And writing.
That's it. Some writing.
Yeah.
And he has a big section about Star Trek, the motion picture, before they made the motion picture, where it was all just being planned and what the different series were. And he starts talking about Harlan's involvement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I really started to, when Stephen King was praising Harlan Ellison, that made me pay attention. Ultimately, the opposite would be more impressive now, but at the time I knew who Stephen King was, didn't know who Harlan was, and I loved the description. So I started looking for him. He was the hipster on the Tonight Show with the sunglasses,
yes,
and the hair and the leather jacket, and just this incredible guy. And I just got some Ellison books when I was about 12, and it was the 2 glass teat essay books.
Ah, yeah.
So there, I am listening, but I am going dark.
Okay.
Is he one of the greatest television writers, you think?
I don't think his volume of television was tremendous. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say whether he would be considered among the greats, but he certainly has a great high quality sampling of work that he's done. Between Star Trek and The Outer Limits alone, just those 3 examples, I think, one for Star Trek and a couple for Outer Limits, is enough to indicate that this is somebody who knows how to write. And the fact of the matter is, he complained about what they did to his script on Star Trek, and it's still great, but he thought that they trashed it in a lot of ways because a lot of times, of course, once they have it in hand, they just, as he says in the documentary, they don't care if you live or die anymore. Once they have the script, they'll mess around with it because they bought it from you. Most writers on television, particularly in that time, worked on spec. They just sold a script, and once it was sold, it belonged to the studio or the television show or whatever. And so they would mess around with it. Just same thing with films. A lot of times, if they buy the story outright, then they'll mess around with it and no longer need permission of the author because they've bought the rights for it. I don't think he really liked that. I mean, I think he liked the money, but I don't think he liked the fact that they could do what they pleased with his work.
There are some directors who I will say do take great pains in when they read something, they'll let you know if they don't like it. One of my favorite stories is John Carpenter when he was taught about directing the second Exorcist movie, and he's reading the script and he's like, "Where's the exorcism?" and basically left. Like he's like, "No, I'm not doing this. This isn't good." I don't blame it.
No, not at all. Speaking of Star Trek, though, there is a connection between Star Trek, Harlan Ellison, and The Outer Limits, and it's Arlene Martell who plays Consuelo in Demon with a Glass Hand. She plays whichever episode it is that I forget the name of it. That Spock has to go back to his home world and mate. The Pon Farr episode, where the woman that's supposed to be his wife is also played by Arlene Martell. So she was.
Wait a minute. She is in an episode of Star Trek: The Continuing Mission with me.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, you look it up.
Very cool.
Yeah. And she's great. Yeah, she's fantastic. Now you talk about Mike. Did you talk about Michael Ansara?
No, we were just talking about.
Michael Ansara is one of the 3 major Klingons.
Yes, he is.
Day of the Dove.
Yes, he was one, and John Kalikos was one.
John Kalikos, yeah, and William Campbell.
Right.
And all 3 of them show up as a trio on DS9.
Yes,
as those Klingons
right.
again.
Yeah,
and they're great.
I remembered. Yeah. Many years later, with a lot of makeup on, because
I'm going back into my hole.
Yeah. Okay. He's gone into his hole. Anyway, I find it very interesting because Ellison, I think one of the reasons why, obviously he, personality-wise, is just that kind of a person who would just get in your face if he didn't like what you were doing or thought that you were trying to take advantage of him or whatever. But also a guy who appreciated the hard work it took to write well, and didn't appreciate it when people took a lot of hard work and kicked it around, or tried to steal it, or were changing it around. So in that respect, I have to respect the guy. I mean, he's this little guy who's just as combative as he can be when crossed. But apparently he was also an incredibly loyal friend too. I mean, he and Robin Williams were great friends. Of course, you see Robin Williams in the first section of the documentary. So.
Yeah, for sure. Just from the 2 shows that I got to watch that he wrote, very entertaining writer. Very good at getting his characters across.
The first I'd heard of him was probably from watching City on the Edge of Forever, Star Trek, because he's one of the 3 writers on that. He's the main writer.
Yeah, I think it's something sometimes we often overlook is the writers who write the stories. Are often, because usually with some movies you see directors will write their own movie sometimes, but it's very interesting because when I'm watching the shows, and I watch the documentary, I could see a lot of Harlan Ellison in his own stories, which made sense to me. It's like you have one guy against all these things.
Sure.
And Harlan Ellison often spoke about being bullied. And, like I could sort of see the Demon with the Glass Hand. I could see a lot of Harlan Ellison in that movie. Where one man's standing up for what he believes in, or a person who thinks he's a man in the movie, within the frame of the show. It was very fascinating to me. Yeah,
another thing about Harlan that is obvious is he has a Jewish identity too. So that, growing up in Cleveland and getting picked on and so on, and mouthing off to guys twice his size and so on, that probably had an effect on that too, his awareness of his Jewishness. Have you ever seen A Boy and His Dog, the film?
No, I've not.
It's an interesting film. It's the first film that I think I saw that was Ellison's. That was his, based on one of his stories. But
Okay.
It Miami Vice, the guy from Miami Vice, was still acting. He was I think he was a teenager when he was in A Boy and His Dog.
Yeah.
And let's see if I can find it real quick. Film. Don Johnson and Jason Robards was in A Boy and His Dog. Ellison didn't do the screenplay, but he wrote the novella, so it's his story.
Yeah. That's amazing. I've never seen it. I'll have to watch it. It's a post nuclear war kind of movie. And you probably like it. I think you would. Jason Robards was in some interesting films late in his career. What year was that?
Boy and His Dog. Oh my God, that was like I want to say around mid 70s, 75, 74, 75. Yeah.
That sounds, yeah.
The novella was late 60s, but they didn't turn it into a movie for a few years.
Because I know he was in The Day After Tomorrow.
That was in the early 80s.
Yeah.
That was an excellent film, of course, and he was in Something Wicked This Way Comes around the same era.
He was also in a little movie called Johnny's Got His Gun, which is a hell of a movie if you've ever seen it. Jason did some interesting movies.
Indeed.
Sure. Even in his early career, like 1,000 Clowns. And all that.
Yeah. That goes back a ways. That's the 60s.
Yeah, he was in some. But yeah, what's something when you guys, because you guys watch probably more Harlan Ellison than I did. What's something that stands out most to you guys from a writing standpoint with his television or film contributions?
He has a well, his perspective is personal in a lot of ways. He has a moral commentary that's interesting and always insightful. And
he's one of the most moralistic writers I know of.
Yes, he's very moral, or at least he has a moral opinion. He has a compass, and it's strong. It's very strong, and so that's one of the things. Again, he has, as a human being, as a man, he had strong opinions about everything, and so that translated into his writing.
Yeah, really, really fascinating writer. The fact that he basically creates, he doesn't call it Terminator, but he basically did create Terminator within two different stories.
Well, they're aspects, yeah.
Which is interesting because Terminator is a movie he never would have written.
No. But Cameron would have never written Terminator without him. So
and that's the bizarre irony.
Yeah.
And that's how Ellison outranks Cameron.
Forget about it. As a writer, forget about it. Cameron is a millionaire. That's the only outranking he does. I really don't like most of his work. A few of his movies I admittedly like, but I'm not real fond of like the newest stuff that he's doing with whatever.
Joel, the book to look for is this. It's a big one, but you can find it a lot in used bookstores. The Essential Ellison.
Yeah.
So it's like an anthology of Ellison.
Yeah, and just to give you an idea,
which is apropos since he did several anthologies. So
yeah, let's see. You can see how thick it is.
Yeah.
Or as you would say, Joel, girthy.
Not veiny, but girthy.
Not veiny, but girthy, and it has a lot of his. I mean, it has all the good stuff. It has Buena's Dog, it has Deathbird. It may have Harlan Ellison's movie. I'm not certain, which is a screenplay he wrote. He wrote a screenplay for I, Robot that's published that you can read, which is really good. And it has things that have been cut. You have to get the right edition of it because he went back and he knuckled under to some of the Me Toovian things, and the story that he's reading in the book, in the movie, where he talks about the starfish and all of that. Not the brown starfish, but the about getting pieces broken off
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yes.
It's from a story called Valerie, which I love. And he, before he died, made that go away.
Yeah. Submitted. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a shame.
Yeah.
But it's in that.
Oh, okay.
So what you're saying is probably a pre-2000 version of that book or a pre-2010 version of that book. It's going to be.
Yeah, let's see. This edition is when was it published? This one came out 91.
Okay, so that's back. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Another book of his you would like, and you can find these things at libraries, online libraries, things like that.
Yeah.
It's a book called Harlan Ellison's Watching.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, I think for FNSF, he was their film critic. And so basically all the major movies of the 80s, and one of the campaigns that he's on that you would love, again, we would all see you writhe with uncontrollable pleasure at what he wrote about Dune. He loves David Lynch's Dune, and he writes beautifully about it. He called it the Gone with the Wind of science fiction.
Yeah.
It's interesting how, I mean, for somebody that doesn't suffer fools, how generous he is with other artists.
He can be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when he sees talent, he will magnify it. To encourage
He had
anybody with it.
He had a great thing where he was giving some major award to Ron Moore for Battlestar Galactica, and he introduced him by saying, "Here's a man so talented. He took the worst science fiction series ever made and turned it into the best science fiction series ever made."
It is a classic shining example of an excellent remake, no doubt. No doubt.
Exactly. There's Jules just laughing. That's the laugh that children hear as the last sounds.
The remake that got made in like the 2000s, yeah, that was really good. It was really.
That's the one he was referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of twists and turns in that one. Very good series.
Yeah, I like the way that they personified the Cylons too.
Yeah.
That was an interesting.
Yeah.
And
we should have had a better final episode. That final episode broke me for television.
Yeah.
I don't trust it now. These these arc-oriented, mystery-driven 12-episode series. Screw you, babe. I'm not watching it.
It's really difficult to it's much, I won't say easier, but it's much more to a writer's wheelhouse to write the not so much the solving or the denouement of a tension building episode.
That's what made the gradual telling of DS9 so perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they plotted and plotted well.
Yeah. There's a real, like, if there's this thing called Depths of DS9 that Razorfist does. Go check it out. Really, really good. They delve deep into those episodes.
Podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty much. Well, if they can get them on, because sometimes they get flagged with copyright, and it's like,
really,
yeah. But they're good episodes when they get them up. So I listen to them; they do a good job.
DS9 is a show where it's kind of like the movie Sleepy Hollow, where even though I really like it, I forget just how good it is until I'm like there in front of it, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. It's one of those things that.
Whereas Babylon 5 was wretched and then was really good, and stayed really. I don't think it ever maybe achieved the heights of DS9,
No, but
but
it
it maintained a consistency that
it
DS9 never did.
developed, it progressed, it became, better than it was,
I would,
and that's a nice thing to watch happen too. You start and it's ticky tacky, and then stuff starts happening and characters start arriving, and that's
Yeah, Jewel, I'm telling you, you would love this show. Start with season 3
yeah, I would
on
say
your first viewing.
I would say the best like sci-fi series like through the '90s and into
Small wonder.
Deep Space Nine, Farscape would be, and Stargate SG-1 are my top 3. They're very, very good.
Yeah, I like SG-1 actually. I thought that was that was an interesting progression from the original film.
And they
nothing for Team Knight Rider.
Yeah.
Noted.
Yeah.
Wasn't Selby on that? Wasn't D-Cell on that?
On Knight Rider?
It was like on Team Knight Rider or something. I think he
Oh,
was.
maybe. I don't know.
I think D-Cell was on that.
Here's the thing too, like Richard Dean Anderson was talking. Kurt Russell actually visited the set of SG-1.
Mm-hmm.
But
that would have been fun. Hopefully not too nerve-wracking.
No, he said.
No, I'm sure Kurt was a very relaxing figure to have around.
He liked what they were doing.
I think that's why he showed up. He saw what they were doing and he enjoyed it, so he wanted to see how they did it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Richard Dean Anderson got to do a lot more than he did in his 2 hours.
Sure, absolutely, he did.
And Anderson's an incredibly underrated actor.
True. I mean, think of where he came from. General Hospital.
Yeah.
In the 80s. General effing Hospital. Playing, one of the young heartthrob doctors. And eventually on to MacGyver, which, again, he made that character accessible. That character could have been... he could have played him as a cold, calculating guy, and he didn't. And then on to SG. He always had an element of everyman in the characters that he played, which I found attractive, accessible to watch. Rooted for the guy.
Even though it didn't live a long life, he was really good in Legend too. Him and John D. Lancey.
Oh, that's a fun show.
Yeah.
Harlan Ellison, really, really talented writer. I mean, that probably even undersells it, but you could tell the dude was immensely talented just by the 2 episodes you watch here. In this documentary, he's very fun to listen to.
Yeah, and these episodes that we've been watching, they're from the 60s, where a lot of what he wrote and envisioned couldn't be achieved on television in its totality yet. So think of that, and then think of, the story, and you realize how good it is.
Could you imagine if he would have wrote for Dark Shadows? That'd have been fun.
Oh, he would have been in knockdown, drag-out fights with Dan Curtis every other day. Because personality-wise, that would have been like oil and vinegar.
I can only imagine.
Pounding each other. Seriously, I think Dan Curtis probably could have thrown him through a wall, but I don't think that would have stopped him.
No, this is what would have happened. He would have thrown him to the wall, and Ellison would have come right back at him
with a knife,
and he would have done something else to Ellison, and Ellison just would be like the Terminator. He would just keep coming back.
Yeah, it's like that kid in school that wasn't big enough to beat up the bullies, but he wouldn't stop coming back, and eventually they leave him alone because he's crazy.
Very interesting person. I love how when he gave his speeches too, he was talking to some kid, and the person insulted himself. He said, "No, you're not. You asked the question. You're not."
Oh yeah, he walked right up to him, right nose to nose.
Yeah,
and just basically told him where the bear crapped in the woods in terms of, no, you need to not think that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an amazing attribute
Mhm.
because it's easy to knock somebody, right?
He, he must have just impulsively or instinctively seen something in that kid because he hated acolyte bullshit. He hated it. He didn't like, oh, you're the teacher, he didn't like that guru stuff at all. He just didn't like it. Um, he knew who he was. He knew what his talent was. He didn't need anybody else telling him,
Yeah.
or stroking him.
Yeah.
He wasn't that kind of guy.
Yeah.
I met him once, and he took to compliments okay.
Yeah, but of course,
not
but
slavish
he,
ones.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that
Yes.
sort of uncomfortable prostation, that kind of
Yes.
stuff that some fans will do gets a little bit much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't like he wasn't socially connected in terms of those kind of things. Yeah, he wasn't like a complete misanthrope. He just didn't want to put up with any BS. That's
He
all.
did not.
What's you guys' 3 favorite science fiction series in maybe in the 90s or just
Oh God. One called Wild Palms.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, loved that. I thought that was a very interesting. I'm not even sure who wrote that. I should look it up. But that one pops right into my mind. That's a very 90s sci-fi series. And it's it sort of prefigures the movement that says we're all living in a computer generated
Yeah.
like we're living in some kind of whatever fake computer generated world. It was 1993. Virtual realities, mass media technology. It's based on a comic strip written by Bruce Wagner, first published in 1990. Who also wrote the screenplay, and Oliver Stone co-executive produced it. It's Jim Belushi, Dana Delaney, Robert Loggia, Kim Cattrall, Phoebe Newworth, David Warner, and Angie Dickinson.
It's a powerful cast.
That's a made-for-TV miniseries.
Yeah.
That's a knockout cast for a made-for-TV miniseries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jewel, not that you asked, but my 3 favorites.
Just give one, so that's fine.
Well, we forget Star Trek: The Next Generation was largely in the 90s.
It was.
It had its first 3 years
In
the 80s, but then its third season, which is when it got really good, and most of the better. By the way, how the third season of Next Generation is so good because all of the good episodes after that are sequels to episodes they did in the third season.
Right.
But
with
yeah,
characters from those episodes.
third season where they best of both worlds, all of that. DS9.
Yes.
Even better than Next Generation.
Yes.
in all regards. And that's not putting Next Generation down. That's just DS9's that good.
That much. Yeah. That much.
Yeah.
And Babylon 5 as the third one.
From season 3.
Yeah. And then season 1 and 2 are watchable. It's kind of like the same thing with DS9.
Yes.
I tell people DS9 start with season 3, and then once you do all of that, then go back and watch seasons 1 and 2,
Right.
and go, oh, okay, that's how that works. Yeah. They kind of inoculates you.
Yeah, sure. From the developmental stage.
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys want to add about Harlan Ellison before we?
Yeah, God rest his soul. We need another one like him.
We do.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you guys want to do Saturday?
I'm going to bow out this weekend. I have a really heavy work schedule this weekend, which is likely to go late into the night, at least on one of those days. We've got a strike, and we're also dumping and demoing a bunch of scenery because we're prepping for a move. Our theater is moving for a year.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's going to be long, and I'm not sure I'm going to be up for it.
Well, Joel, I have been picking these things like crazy. What would you like to do?
I'd love to do the Phantom of the Opera.
Which one?
That's a good question.
Silent One?
Yeah, there's a bunch. Oh my god.
One with Claude Rains?
Yeah, they're both.
Herbert Lom?
Phantom of the Disco?
God. Let's do 1925's The Phantom of the Opera. Why not?
The real one.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So Saturday night, I'll see you here at 10:30, Patrick. Alan, Patrick, you guys have a great weekend.
Indeed.
Stay safe. Take care.
Bye.
I'm not a crook.